What's good with the YouTube? You already know this is Big Flocka with the Convicts Reaction, where we smash, dash, and react, man. Please hit the like, comment, subscribe, and do all things to help support this channel. And hit that bell notification for future reactions, man. And what we got today, man, we got a story that's an interesting one. It's a Norteño episode that was done by a channel called Chronicles, which has a lot of good content, guys. Let me fix my headset. There we go. And it's something different. New channel has 98,000 subscribers, man. I've watched other content on their channel, man. They're really good, man. So let's check out this video, man, and we'll react to it. Upload it. Norteños dominate the city.
On August 25th, 2008, Eric Zachary Anderson sat down in his cell at the Martinez Detention Facility in Contra Costa County, California, and penned a letter to Judge Teresa Canepa. He told the judge that he was innocent, that he had witnesses to back up his alibi.
So off top, man, Coco County, man, there's something in the water, man. There's a lot of woods out there. There's Norteños, there's Sureños, there's blacks, there's everything out there, man. The woods are actually a factor out there, man. But there's also a lot of whites that are also homeboys from out there, man. We already know Woody's from out that way. Richmond, we got Martinez, Pittsburgh, Antioch, Brentwood, all those cities, man. So I used to live out in Antioch and Byron for a long time in Pittsburgh. So this is going to be interesting. So I may know some of these people.
Who were never called during his trial. And he was now being forced to pay the price for someone else's actions. He told Canepa that he had made mistakes in his young life, but tried to do good whenever he could. Then he asked Canepa for mercy. Quote, "I believe everything happens for a reason, and maybe I have to go through some more trials and tribulations before I can beat this on appeal. All I can do is keep my faith in God and stay positive."
That's a common thing that every time somebody is facing time, I see this time and time again, man, that, you know, once they're looking at a lot of time, life sentences or some serious time, sometimes there's people homeboys just pick up the Bible. I've seen it time and time again, man. Let's get to this though, man. Let's see where it goes though.
Anderson's pleas fell on deaf ears. The next day, Canepa sentenced Anderson and his co-defendant, Randy Phipps Salazar, to life in prison without the possibility of parole, virtually guaranteeing that both men will die in prison, barring a successful appeal or change in law. Their fate was by no means a foregone conclusion.
One dude looks more the Norteño role or more even the Wood role, which is kind of the right than this dude on the left, man.
Multiple witnesses froze up on the stand and flat out refused to testify, so terrified of the potential consequences that they were willing to take jail time for contempt of court, rather than simply repeat statements they'd already given to police.
So if you gave statements to police and they subpoena you to the court into trial, they could actually charge you with contempt in court based on the fact that you don't answer these charges, man. So apparently these people, witnesses, either they didn't see nothing, they decided to recant their statements, or who knows.
In order to understand how two men arrested for murder in their teens came to receive the most stringent penalty possible in the state of California, we have to go back 4 years earlier to an area defined by gang violence and methamphetamine trafficking, where people betray their supposed friends on a regular basis. But first, for those of you who aren't familiar, the city of Antioch, California has the makings of a typical Bay Area suburb, full of stucco houses, shopping centers, little league fields, and a population of folks who commute to and from their jobs 5 days a week, pay their taxes, and go out to Chili's or Red Robin on a Saturday night. But over the past 20 years, Antioch has slowly become one of the most crime-ridden cities in the Bay Area, thanks to a changing housing market and drastic adaptations to how gangs in Northern California function, as well as a police force that's currently the subject of an FBI probe centering on cocaine, steroids, and other yet-to-be-disclosed criminal offenses. Antioch is located along the Delta, a freshwater river in East Contra.
He's right. Antioch has been filled with a lot of different people coming from all areas: Oakland, San Francisco, Vallejo, Pittsburgh. A lot of people from the Pueblo projects moved over there to Sycamore. Pueblo used to be like, it's on the other side of Love Ridge or Railroad, other side, kind of in between Love Ridge and Railroad right there, man. It's pretty much, last time I was out there, it's pretty much dead, right? They're pretty much on that shiesty game. But it used to be the spot where you get their curve served on back in the days, and the Bay Point as well. All that's kind of changed. Now everything's more on Sycamore.
Contra County that flows from the Sacramento River and eventually into the San Francisco Bay, and which is a main source of water in the area. Ironically, Antioch is known by the nickname Dirty Waters.
Dirty Waters,
an apt title, given that historically the city has been full of backstabbers, secret police informants, and criminals who are willing to set up their own friends for robberies or worse.
Oh my God!
That's how Antioch is, though, man. It's wild out there, man. I'm trying to tell you guys.
During the 2010s, in the wake of a subprime mortgage crisis,
that's when I was out
Antioch saw an influx of folks who were priced out of wealthier communities throughout the
Bay. A lot of
Area
foreclosures.
And forced to relocate east into Contra Costa County, Stockton, and other parts of the state with lower costs of living. Unfortunately, this also brought in gang members from all over the Bay Area, and gangs that were once contained to small neighborhoods in, say, San Francisco or Oakland, now found themselves spread out all over. In some cases, rival gang members ended up living in the same apartment building in Antioch, or on the same block, and new rivalries and alliances started popping up everywhere as a consequence. Groups like Clap Shit, Broad Day, the Low Mob, Broad Day Killers, All on a Bitch, and Kumi 415 started popping up all over town, to name a few. But before all of that, the city's premier and most dominant gang were the Nortenos, a predominantly Latin American gang that started in San Quentin.
Yeah, for a while there wasn't even Sureños really out there. There's not really even that many Sureños out there now, but there was a few over there off of Sycamore too, off of Lemon Tree in that area, man. Nortenos have traditionally been, the main source of homeboys. There's been a lot of whites out there that are not really necessary from any gangs. Actually, the wood car is pretty big in Cook County.
In the 1960s, and is now part of a massive interconnected web of street cliques and prison gangs to include the Nuestra Familia, the Northern Structure, and countless sets spread out all over California and much of the Pacific Northwest. In the 1990s, the Norteños were by far the largest gang in the area, though most of the gang violence and crime at the time was concentrated in the neighboring city of Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh was pretty bad.
In fact, hardly anyone outside of the local community acknowledged the presence of Norteños in Antioch until the late 1990s, when a Norteño member named Ryan Wood, also known as Woody, put out a self-produced album called Yock Influenced, in which he flaunted his experiences as a gang member.
I'm gonna sit there and say, so far this dude's research is bar none. It's fucking, I don't know if he's a former Norteño, Sureño, white, or just a regular dude, but his stuff, man, is really good. He's done a good job, man. If you look at Swamp Stories, no good. This guy's stuff has been good so far, man.
In the city, as well as his connections to some of the most high-profile crimes in the area. There is one other factor that affects day-to-day life in not just East Contra Costa County, but the entire region.
Yes.
Methamphetamine. Decades ago, the marshy, deep east regions of Contra Costa were splattered with hidden meth labs, mostly controlled by biker gangs, and urban legends of unclaimed, secret cash stashes hidden by drug kingpins still exist to this day. Presently, Cocoa County is still known as a place where meth availability is at most a 5-minute drive away, and nowhere is that more true than Antioch and its adjacent communities. It is these two worlds that intersected in the early morning of September 21st, 2004, when a man named Matthew Stevens got out of bed early in keeping with his normal weekday routine. Like many Antioch residents, Stevens worked in San Francisco and usually got up around 4:30 a.m. to make the commute. He would keep a blue blanket in his car in case he got to work early so he could catch up on sleep. A short distance away, 2 other Antioch men were wide awake that morning. But unlike Stevens, it wasn't because they were headed off to their places of employment. As witnesses would later tell police, Salazar and Stevens had been hanging out at various Antioch residences with a large group of others, to include Eric and Filthy Phil and Jojo. Everyone in the group was smoking meth and stayed awake throughout the night, But Salazar, a member of a Norteño subset known as the elite Northern Empire, seemed especially agitated and walked from room to room, revolver in hand, saying out loud he believed someone else was hiding in the house. Earlier in the day, a meth dealer and Norteño member named Gabriel had gone to the home of Mariette and, with the help of his brother Eric, a man named Michael and a woman named Christy, stole a rental Pontiac from Mariette before heading off to the home of Gary Chief Elizondo on West 16th Street, a known meth house. As luck would have it, 2 Antioch cops stopped by Chief's house that day as a part of a check theft investigation, where they observed the Pontiac parked outside. Hours later, in the early morning of the 21st, Eric E. Lowe Anderson, Salazar, and Gabriel drove to Pittsburgh, where they dropped one of their friends off at a residence known as the Crack Shack, and another in a gated community, where they signed a sign-in sheet to get in, roughly 15 minutes before Stephen's alarm clock went off that day. Then they went back to Chief's house, where got out of the car, telling Anderson he wanted the Pontiac back the next day.
Interesting storyline so far, man. You know what I mean? How much more time we got? Try to speed up a little bit if I have to.
What happened next, according to police at least, was that Salazar and Anderson got the idea that they would drive around town looking for a robbery.
Definitely good.
In what some referred to as rooting. That led them to East Lake Drive, where they stumbled upon Stevens and attempted to rob him at gunpoint. He resisted, leading to a struggle, and at some point the gun went off. Stevens was fatally wounded, and his body was found a short time later. They abandoned the Pontiac and went to...
See, that's the thing about drugs, man, is that sometimes people commit certain crimes and not think out their actions or the ramifications of it, man. So you're putting yourself at risk every day, man. If for getting high and running the streets, and you gotta be prepared for the consequences, man. You can't just cry afterwards and stuff, man. It is what it is, man. Sometimes in life, man. This is a good story so far, man.
Their separate ways, and from there,
there's somebody outside. If you had a gun in the hand and shit, and they were wrestling, and the gun went off. That makes sense. Why would they even want it? That explains the case. Relax. Yeah, man, because look, I'm not gonna go there, but you're right, man. No, I'm shit nervous, man. I'm fucking hella nervous, man. Now, what's going on, man? You want some for me? I need some cookies too or something.
I want some cookies too. You guys hear that, man? He's like making demands.
gasped at what Anderson had confessed, told him to keep his mouth shut about it and not tell anyone. Anderson replied he'd already told about 8 people. Many of them, including and Fernando, would later make statements to police. The cops, meanwhile, were well on their way to solving the case on their own. It turns out an eyewitness had spotted the Pontiac moving to East Lake Drive moments before the shooting, and since there weren't too many cars on that quiet residential street at the time, detectives quickly honed in on that as their best lead. They traced the Pontiac to Chief, the media. Anderson immediately contacted a public defender and turned himself in. Salazar went a slightly different route. On October 4th, 2004, he was spotted by officers, refused to stop, and attempted to make a getaway. He sped away in his bronze Acura until a tire blew out, then ran to the foot of the Antioch Bridge and jumped into the San Joaquin River, where police plucked him out.
He went
Still,
on, man.
if this seemed like
He
the
jumped
makings of
out.
an open and shut case, it was far from it. In their first trial in late 2007, witnesses not only refused to testify, at least one, Yamila, refused to even show up in court. The result was a hung jury and a retrial for both men that occurred in 2008, where, once again, flat out refused to take the stand. When Judge Canepa forced her into the courtroom to answer questions, offered her immunity, and told her she had no legitimate reason to decline to give answers, said she would rather accept a contempt of court charge.
Wow.
The same thing happened with Fernando, but the prosecutor, Mary Knox, argued that these witnesses' refusal was evidence of how powerful the Norteño gang was in Antioch, and that it was able to interfere with the justice system by reputation alone. This was supplanted by the testimony of an Antioch police gang expert who labeled Salazar a high-ranking member of the NA exchange for leniency. In the end, Salazar and Anderson were convicted of murder and robbery, making them eligible for life without parole. They were 18 and 19 at the time of the crime, which, if they're lucky, may give them a parole date at some point, thanks to a California Supreme Court decision that applies to convicted murderers under the age of 25. In the meantime, both men remain in the state's prison system, and their only presence in the street has come in the form of shout-outs on albums from prominent local rappers.
Stick to the code of silence like Randy Salazar in New York, doing life just for keeping his lips tight.
Randy Salazar and Rascal from the state pen, man, we miss you, bud, and that gang.
Anderson even recorded a song from prison.
So, guys, that was a pretty good little storyline, man. I was out there in Antioch, man. There's a lot of Nortenos out there. There's a lot of everything, man. It's a melting pot for all kinds of shit, man. And meth pretty much has that whole town fucking influence, Yaki influence. You get what I'm saying? Anyways, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction, man. It's like I said, it's an everyday lifestyle out there in Antioch, man. I think it was something different. It showed a different area that nobody really taps into. And this, like I said, man, Antioch, man, is cutthroat, man. Everybody's on that dirtbag shit, man. For reals. All right, guys, you guys have a good one. This Flacco Comics reaction. I'm done.